No one's like, my dream is to grow up and enter data into a database manually. Like, no one wants to do that. They want to be doing cooler things. So that's where I saw the need for the company that would become Dauntless, was this need for being able to do things digitally native, hands-free, dealing with lots of data, lots of complicated information.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening today. Today I'm speaking with Lori-Lee Elliott, co-founder and CEO of Dauntless XR, a leader in extended reality software. Lori-Lee, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely going to be a great conversation today. So being a founder of a tech company is challenging. It's not necessarily something that folks line up to do, right away. How did you find yourself in the entrepreneurial land and founding Dauntless XR, which I know didn't start that way, but can you share a little bit of that journey?
Yeah, it was a very roundabout way. I definitely never sort of set out to start a tech company. As we were talking about, I have a background in journalism, and I actually originally did my undergrad in anthropology and psychology. So nothing related to business or defense or technology. But after I graduated, I went to NYU. I did a master's in journalism, and I'd been working as a journalist in school, covering tech and the intersection of kind of technology and culture. But I'm not American. So when I graduated, I knew that I would have to leave. So I took a job working for a US company, but in Australia. And I was doing the engineering and construction of LNG, or liquefied natural gas facilities. So like really big infrastructure energy projects. I started off as a technical writer, so this tracks, this makes sense, journalism. But when I got there, it turned out they actually needed someone who could build and maintain databases. And I had done some work with that in my undergrad, kind of very quickly, became a self-taught data scientist, built up their engineering databases to handle all the things that they needed to turn over to the client. So engineering data, QA, QC paperwork, all the things that go into handing over a mega project. And, I'd worked in oil and gas before. As I mentioned, I'm Canadian, so I worked in the oil sands. But this was my first $1 billion plus job. This was multiple billions of dollars. And I was really shocked at how much of it was done with pen and paper and legacy software, which, since coming into DoD land, might be something that people identify with, really big missions, and you got a clipboard, trusty Clippy there to keep you going. A lot of manual data entry. And the thing was, people don't enjoy doing that. No one's like, my dream is to grow up and enter data into a database manually. No one wants to do that. They want to be doing cooler things. So that's where I saw the need for the company that would become Dauntless, was this need for being able to do things digitally native, hands-free, dealing with lots of data, lots of complicated information. And when I was a journalist, I'd seen really early XR technology. I found my notebook and I called it computer screen and glasses, as how I described it a long time ago. And I was like, I think this is where these two things need to intersect. So that's how things got started. We tried working with existing companies for a long time to get them to build it. And then eventually...
Was this on your own you were doing that, or was this part of the company still as you?
This was very early days of the company. So I found a co-founder who happened to be a product manager, which is actually kind of difficult to find, surprisingly difficult, but we crossed paths and we started kind of putting together the initial pitch deck for what did this product need to do? What did the company need to do? And the idea of building it ourselves, we were like, there's no way. This is such a crazy thing. Someone else must want to build this or be able to build it. And we spent a good 6 months literally scouring the globe. We were on calls, countries all over the place, trying to find a company that was interested in building a product for this use case. And then eventually I had a friend and mentor who is a VC, and he invited me out to Silicon Valley and sat me down and was like, you just need to build it yourself. Stop wasting time on the phone talking to everyone else. You just need to build it yourself. So after that, I was like, okay, we'll find a CTO. We'll build it ourselves. And we did.
Very cool. And that first company was FutureSight AR, is that correct?
Yeah, so it's the same company we have now, but we were originally called Future Site because the product was very focused in on construction, energy, infrastructure. So the name sort of alluded to a construction site. And we since rebranded after we kind of pivoted a little bit away from that.
And so your thought was taking database and, getting it into a form that does something, but how does the AR piece come to that? Where did you combine those two?
The original use case, there were kind of two ways we wanted to use augmented reality, and those are still very much echoed in what we ended up building today. So the first was to take all of these procedures, checklists, inspections that are typically on paper. Sometimes if they're really fancy, they'll be on an iPad, but making them available in an XR interface. So you can fill out these forms, you can reference the procedures, you can reference all your drawings hands-free without compromising your field of view. So you're not in VR, you can still see everything around you. And just being able to access that information and then fill out your forms as you're doing the work. That was kind of, one of the main use cases where, the early tests where we tried this out on construction sites, you could do work like the numbers were kind of crazy, even when it was very basic tech, like 45% faster and with a third of the workforce, just by having this information available in a way that is really intuitive to your environment, having this like digital work front on your face. And reducing rework. That was a big thing I saw in my job was humans make mistakes. And when you're building something, you can't just be like, oopsie, let's just plaster over that and keep going. Like, no, you got to rip it out. Sometimes that material is done for, so you're throwing it in the trash, you're creating more waste, and you have to go back and do it again. And we found that if you can provide that information, like, where it's literally in your face, you can cut down on rework by like 90%.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Seeing like really great opportunity here. And the other application was, and we don't really do this anymore. The way this particular one has evolved a bit, but being able to take the 3D model, because all of these projects have an incredibly detailed 3D model, and being able to overlay that onto the construction site while it's being built. So you can see, this is where things are going to go. This is what it's supposed to look like. And being able to line that up with a high degree of accuracy so you can see, where things are supposed to go. And then, but also attaching the engineering data to those elements. So if a valve is supposed to go here, where is that valve spec sheet? Where are all the QA/QC forms that go with that valve, and being able to have that kind of overlaid in a digital twin. I'm hesitant to use that term, but like a digital twin kind of situation. If you've seen my LinkedIn, I think I have said a couple times that people that are off selling digital twin services are selling expensive consulting at this point. Like it's not quite a real thing yet, but it's getting there.
Well, I think AI is very similar. Everyone says they're AI for basic machine algorithms. And so then you took that, and then why the rebrand to Dauntless, and what's the difference between AR and XR?
Yeah, so XR is kind of a catch-all term for anything that is on the augmented, mixed, or virtual reality spectrum. So technically, our applications can be any of those three. How they differ is, augmented reality is anything that just overlays digital elements into your field of view, but you can still see everything. So a heads-up display like that you would have on an aircraft is a type of augmented reality. Mixed reality, which is a little bit more of a contentious term because Microsoft actually uses it as part of their branding. Sometimes companies will say mixed reality, others will say spatial computing. But what they mean is it's still, that kind of augmented reality concept where you're still maintaining situational awareness, you see everything. You are overlaying digital elements, but you are also using some computer vision or some spatial computing to analyze the environment in front of you. So those elements are intelligently placed in your environment. So for example, like if you're in front of a desk and you're looking at something in mixed reality, the application might place it on the desk, right? Whereas if it was augmented, it would just be floating in front of you, wherever your head turns. And then, virtual reality, most people are familiar with that. You're completely immersed. You can't see the room anymore. And with the Apple Vision Pro, they have made it a little bit more mainstream, but the concept of pass-through VR. So that's where your vision is still completely occluded, but there are cameras on the outside of the headset that are playing you a video feed of what is around you and then overlaying digital concepts. And that kind of distinction only really matters if you are in a situation where situational awareness is important. If you're in a hazardous environment or something like that, you want to make sure your pass-through VR is operating just exquisitely.
Right.
Yeah, rebranding and pivoting, fantastic experiences that all founders, I feel like, go through at some point. But like I said, we started off kind of with this very specific, like industrial construction, energy infrastructure use case. And we still serve those verticals. We launched a product right before the pandemic that very much addressed those customers. And then the pandemic kind of threw us and everyone for a loop. And then all of a sudden, like everything was up in the air. And we ended up having to kind of rebase and figure out, like, how do we adjust to this new world? And while we were doing that, one of the things that we started to do was become more involved with AFWorks and the events they were doing, because there was a pretty strong demand for augmented and virtual reality solutions for the Air Force. So we started off engaging more and just say, like, hey, we can help educate you on like what we learned and like best practices and things like that. We never really intended to become a government contractor, but through the course of that, we had some Air Force folks reach out and be like, hey, I know like construction, but can we use this on base? Can we use this with aircraft? And we're kind of like, well, we have like the SBIR program. Why don't we use it and find out? So that's what we did. We ended up initially doing some phase 1 SIBRs and winning those and transitioned to phase 2. And then we have just kind of kept going from there. But, kind of midway through that process where we realized like Air Force is a really great first customer for this, because people are used to using immersive technology, right? Like you don't have to explain to an airman why a simulator is useful, right?
Right.
So that makes them really great first customers. We were like, there's something here. This might be a really good track for us. And at that point, the name just didn't really fit anymore. So we decided to rebrand, and we went through that process a little over a year ago.
And what are the use cases you see right now that is Dauntless XR? What are you trying to, with the Air Force, evaluate and promote?
Yeah, so there's two main ones, and we did end up splitting it into two applications, because I think ultimately they'll come together, but for right now they need to be their own silos. Government loves silos. Loves a good silo.
Absolutely.
So the first one, which was the one that carried over most directly from construction, is the application that would become Katana XR, which is mixed reality guided workflows, mixed reality training. So that's the pretty straightforward use case of, we have a desktop application where you can take traditional resources, whether that's, a PDF, a PowerPoint. Carl, who just knows a lot, you can sit him down at a computer and they can create a training, a guide, a procedure, a checklist that will be mixed reality native. And then you're able to push that out to the wearable application, which we're hardware agnostic. That's a whole other thing we can talk about later. So you can view it on headset or on phone or tablet, and it will guide someone through, either a training or a checklist, a task order, a procedure. And then while they're doing it, they can record their progress. They can put in inputs straight through the headset using hand gestures or voice commands. So the progress is showing up in real time. Instead of, at the end of the day where you hand everything in, or, whenever that information is collected, if you have the connectivity, you can see it as it's happening. And then with training, you can get in there as well.
So for that piece, would that be like an aircraft maintainer is changing a gearbox? He could be using that, and the training is there with him. And so can someone else cue in with him at that point?
That's one of the features we're working on right now, is being able to have someone pop in and be able to see in a training context what they're doing. And then also we ultimately want to have, like, when they're actually out, like on the flight line doing the maintenance, if they need to phone a friend or call an expert, they'll be able to do that within the application as well. But that's kind of one of the things that makes us a little bit different, is you can do this stuff in training mode or in island mode, or you can do it actually like on the job. You can have this with you while you're actually doing the task. And that has applicability for like agile combat employment or multi-capable airmen, like those kind of concepts. So that's Katana. And that was, kind of our original where we could deliver value kind of very quickly. And then the second one, which evolved quite a bit over the course of its short life, is a mixed reality data visualization tool. And that's the application we call Aura. And it actually has many different use cases depending on who you are. It's sort of content or like data agnostic as well. So how that one is being used by the Air Force right now is we use it for mission debriefing. So we take the flight data recorder files, you load them into the desktop hub, and it will create a session for you. And in that session, you will see a topographical map of the area that you flew the mission over, and you'll see the flight path of your aircraft and all the other aircraft that you load in. You can put in as many as you want or as many as were in the air. It will synchronize the timeline for you. So, you're looking at like a cohesive timeline, and you can play back your mission. We replicated the engine stack display and the primary flight display, so you can see all of your instrument readings for every second of the flight. If you wanted to scrub to a certain point and see exactly what you were doing at that point in time, you can. While you're in there, you can annotate, so you can draw. And we're working on dropping some other artifacts in more for the planning side. So if you had things like a surface to air missile, like dome, like this is the range of that versus the mission you're about to fly, or, your MOAs or, things like that. But right now you can go in there, you can annotate. And what is cool is you can have multiple people in here looking at the same thing as if it were a real physical object. So you can have multiple crew members join and do the debrief together. And the kind of one of the side benefits of this is, when you're trying to learn from a mission you've already flown, it makes it more objective, right? You're just looking at the data. Like, this is what happened versus what you might have remembered, or if you're flying with a trainer, like what the trainer saw at this point in time. Like, it kind of takes away that like, oh, well, you weren't looking and I was doing it right. It's like, well, the plane recorded everything. Here it is. So that's Aura. That's how it's being used by the Air Force. For NASA, which is another one of our contracts with one of our customers, we are using it with them to bring in satellite data first for heliophysics. So like monitoring what the sun is doing, which does have defense implications as well, but basically using it to monitor if a coronal mass ejection or a solar flare is happening, like how can we detect that as early as possible and then build in some prediction models so people can go in there and run different simulations, if this happened and would the Earth be in the way if it got hit at this time, like, what would that look like for impact, for people on the ISS or people that are on a mission to the moon or Mars. So that's another really interesting use case. That will be fun to build out. But we would ultimately like all of the NASA satellite fleet in there. I think that would be really cool.
That would be. Well, it's interesting that flew fighters for many years, and it wasn't that long ago, but literally it's chalkboard drawing lines of where folks were. And then in the debrief, 10 hours of debriefing of playing a tape and saying, what did you see here? And you're trying to look at that. And so having that reality is obviously great. I imagine saves a lot of time and makes it more accurate and objective to identify how to do better next time. So that's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're working on adding in more sensors. So like if, for something like a red flag exercise where what were you doing at this time? When did you fire this? When did this happen? Being able to just take the need to go back and like debrief on that and be like, well, this is where it happened. I think we'll cut down, hopefully you're not in an 8 or 10 hour debrief. You can do it a lot faster.
Yes. How hard was it to get with the Air Force? Obviously that data is very sensitive, and, to share that, to get through, let's say, that challenge of data sensitivity, and especially if you're showing what instruments are saying and flight controls.
Yeah. I will say that some of it was luck that we happened to find the one right guy that knew where that data lived and how to get it at the right time, because I don't think he's in that role anymore. So part of that was kind of luck. We were in the right place at the right time, asking the right questions. Otherwise, it is really hard. You have to, it's, if that person like didn't happen to just be in our sphere, you're going to have to go and pick up the phone and hit the sidewalk and try to find them. Because I think that's the only way to get it done, is to find the right person and, working. And it was sort of lucky because the data that we started using wasn't as classified as it would have been if we were, trying to go after like F-35 data. So we were able to start with something that is still like CUI, but not completely locked down. And that helped a lot to just set the groundwork.
So this space is starting to become, you've got simulators, you've got other companies doing, on the surface, it sounds similar to penetrate this market with defense and the Air Force. What is the big differentiator for Dauntless?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple. I think being hardware agnostic has been a big one that has definitely set us apart so far. More companies are catching on that they need to do that. So, which is good. I think it's a net good for the market. And then because we're mixed reality, we're able to operate in more environments. This is coming from that construction background where you need to be able to use this thing like in a dirt field in the middle of nowhere with no connectivity and harsh light. So a lot of those conditions exist for the folks in the DoD as well. So having that being able to operate in dynamic environments, austere environments, hazardous environments has also been a differentiator. A lot of immersive products, they like well-lit rooms with good Wi-Fi, 4 walls, our applications are designed to not have those things, right? It's great if you do, but they don't have to. And then I think, especially for Aura, like a lot of those kind of visualization tools often tend to focus on generating more data. And that product was really built under the assumption, well, not the assumption, but from seeing that these customers have lots of data, whether you're, the Air Force or Army, Navy, or you're a commercial company, odds are you have a ton of data already that just isn't being utilized in a way that is really useful for your people. So we can take that without adding more ones and zeros to what you already have and just make better use of what's there. Whereas a lot of other solutions will be like, oh, okay, and then we can add in like all this other stuff. And I'm like, let's just get what you have working first. And then we can talk about sprinkling in like AI magic or like whatever else is out there. It's interesting. I think both of our products are very much like these kind of onboarding, like gateway drug applications to all the cool stuff on the other side. It's like, you kind of have to eat your vegetables and work out and pay down that tech debt before you can unlock all these other things. And that's where we're a little bit different.
Okay, that's great. What has been the biggest technical challenge to get to this point so far?
There's a couple. I'd say for the defense sector, hardware has been probably the toughest one because as we make software, we don't make headsets, right? So as XR developers, we have kind of limited options to what devices we can deploy on, like, what headsets have ATO, what ones can run on defense networks. And the way around this is to either commit to a specific device, which is risky because it might disappear, or take the time to build hardware agnostic, which is going to take more time and more money, and kind of just hope that the device manufacturers deliver a DoD compliant solution eventually. There's also kind of expectation management in regards to the hardware performance. People see a lot of, well, I saw this in a movie, or like you see these really cool product demos or commercials that are not actually based in reality. And then we come in and we're like, well, this is what it can actually do. So that's an issue. And it can be things like fidelity or like the battery life, or companies are really good at hiding if the device is wired, like if it's tethered to a computer or tethered to a battery pack or something, like, things are not always as they appear. And then, security, cybersecurity, that's always a challenge, as I'm sure you can talk about in great detail. And XR applications have a particular vulnerability, which we can talk about more if that's interesting. But in regards to the payload asset data, where threats can hide in the malicious code, along with, the hardware device security itself. All XR devices have forward-facing cameras, and, dealing with security, there's a lot of instances where cameras need to be disabled, but the device needs them to operate. So,
maneuvering through that,
figuring out, yeah. And then I said the final one would be accessibility. In order for these solutions to get really good, rollout and user adoption, they need to be no code or low code. Like, people are not going to become XR developers to use these applications. So, and you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't need to become an XR developer to create XR content. And that's been one of our kind of tenets from the beginning, is it should be very easy to use. So there's a lot of platforms that give users no code authoring abilities. None of these are really optimized for XR. The DoD, they're, interested in trying to use existing resources, but, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. We've gone and built some no code authoring ourselves that will be available soon, but it depends how sophisticated you want to get, how much of it you'll be able to do on your own.
So are you creating content then? Are you the major content creator, or is the customer creating the content and then you're just providing the platform where that is enabled?
So we will create content for you. We will do the data transformation if that's what you want, but our kind of ultimate goal is that the customer should be doing it themselves. For the Air Force, you have your own subject matter experts, and we want them to be using the platform as much as possible. Same with, loading up your mission debriefs. You don't want us in the room over on a computer in the corner doing that for you. You need to be able to do that on your own. So that's always been, what we've been building towards is we can get you started, but really the customer has to own it. We want to see XR content creators out there all day long.
That makes sense. So from a technology standpoint, as we're continuing, technology is evolving quickly. What do you think the, latest trends in technology will Dauntless be able to really harness to, continue the growth of your products?
Yeah. I mean, what we've been seeing lately is I think there's going to be some intersection of these emerging technologies. So one of the things that's really exciting right now, actually, I'll give you the top three. I think biometrics, generative AI, and blockchain coming together to kind of create these applications that are just too useful to not use. So one of the things where we're going to be working on this year is integrating biometric feedback into your XR experience. And have to be a little bit vague about what exactly that entails, but I can tell you some of it is like science fiction. When we were looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is real and I get to work on it. But, integrating that into an XR experience in a way that's not creepy or Big Brother-y, because no one likes that, but helpful to the user, right? And then with blockchain, using that as a way to securely transfer data between entities. I think that in collaboration with XR, whether that's how, if you're filling out keep it really general and just say something, I don't know if this would actually happen, but say you're filling out a checklist and you need to send it to someone, blockchain technology might be a way to securely do that. That one's actually a little further off because the computing power is so high and the energy demands are so high for something like that. And then with generative AI, which every time I look at solicitations now, there's some line item in there about AI. But for XR, you can use that, if you've seen the programs where you can put in a prompt and it will give you an image, you can also do that for 3D assets, right? So things that you would use in an XR experience. And then even more basic than that, just having the ability to access a chatbot through your XR interface, be like, hey, I'm working on this procedure, but I don't know what X, Y, and Z is. Being able to put that in and have it spit something back out to you based on reading an entire item or something would be useful. So that's, I think, the bigger emerging tech coming together. And then I think the thing that will help move XR forward is just the headset kind of bottleneck. We really need headsets to get better lighter, stronger, faster, more compliant. And I think that will help a lot, because you look at something like far onto the commercial side, like the Meta Ray-Bans, the just Ray-Ban glasses with cameras in them. They're so much easier to use because they just look like normal glasses compared to putting on an Apple Vision Pro, right? Like,
you can, less clunky, more discreet.
More discreet. It does less things. It just takes video. But I think that will be a pretty big driver for the industry going forward.
Don't forget about neural implants.
Oh, yes. Go in for your brain drilling surgery and be up and running right away.
There we go.
Yeah.
We'll pivot a little bit then more to like working with the government. So obviously AFWorks and the innovation funds they have and the programs, have really harnessed the ability for smaller companies to get involved with DoD without having to go through the giant acquisition system. You mentioned you were involved in some cyber and CITR contracts. Talk to me a little about, how that went, the challenges. I
mean, we actually had a pretty good experience going through AFWorks and CIBRs and STTRs. I'd say a lot of people overlook phase ones. They look at a phase one and they're like, no, I don't like that. I think phase ones are a great place to start. And you'd be shocked at how often people come up to me and ask, like, how did you do all of this? And I'm like, start with phase one. Like, it gives you phase three sole source ability as soon as you win. So yeah, the process for us was, pretty smooth. We'd met some champions through AFWorks on the Air Force side that helped us, with you don't need a customer memorandum for a phase one, but we put together the application.
So for the listener, like, what is a phase? Can you explain?
So the SBIR and STTR program operate on a 3-phase approach. Each phase is a different contract type. So a phase one is typically for a feasibility study or a prototype or some kind of market analysis, depending on what you're offering. And they are a smaller dollar amount. So anywhere from $50,000 to, I've seen ones for like $240,000, depending on the agency. So each agency has different kind of price buckets. They're typically shorter in duration. A phase one for AFWorks is 90 days. Some are 6 months. The STTR for NASA is 13 months. So shorter relatively. And you basically use your phase one to demonstrate to your prospective government customer that what you're working on has value. It answers a particular requirement, or you use that time to find your government customer if the topic isn't defined. And then you move on to, if you're successful at completing your phase one, you are invited to apply for a phase two, which is more money. I think now the Air Force ones are up to 1.8 million. But they can be anywhere from like 750,000. I think like Defense Health Agency has some for like 3.4 million phase two. Don't like set your expectations too high. Most of them are like around the $1 million mark, and they run for 24 months. And they are expecting something like MVP or better out of a phase two. And then while you're in your phase two, that's where you spend your time trying to transition to the fabled phase three. You got to cross the valley of death and get to a phase three, which is a more standard government contract that is not funded by SBIR or STTR dollars. And that is harder to do. But the nice thing about phase threes, if you've gone through the program, is you can be sole sourced. So worth your time to look into that. And there's no dollar cap on how much a phase three contract can be for. It can be for $1. It can be for $10 billion. There's no restraints on that. There are other things in between a phase two and phase three. They're kind of agency specific though. Like AFWorks has the TAC-FI, STRAT-FI program where you do matching funds, and they'll give you kind of a bridge between, whatever $1.8 million and 30 million.
Something like that.
You have to look it up. I think it changes also like year to year. But then the other agencies all have their own programs to help you bridge that gap after phase two. NASA has like 3 different programs for post phase two. I'm not sure what Army and Navy do, but they'll have something. And yeah, you can with Air Force anyway, do direct to phase two for certain topics. They will let you skip the feasibility study. You still have to demonstrate feasibility study like results, but you can go direct to phase 2 and start on MVP if that's appropriate.
You've been successful in getting to phase 1, phase 2. Have you gone to phase 3 yet?
We've done one phase 3. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so have you experienced struggle getting across the valley of death?
Yeah. I mean, we got across it, but you have to keep trying. You get pushed back. You have to keep searching.
They really don't want you to cross it.
There's a lot of things in play, and then, folks move around so much on the government side, and that's by design, I assume. So it is sort of like a hamster wheel. You're constantly trying. You're always looking to fill your solicitation pipeline and do demos and keep relationships warm. But yeah, it's not a surefire thing. Once you get one phase 3, you're not done forever, and you can put your feet up and grab a coffee. Keep trying.
Did you source this internally, or because I know there are a lot of consultants out there? Or did you find assistants to walk you through those processes?
So I did the initial proposals myself. What we won our original phase 1s off of, I did. And then when we weren't expecting to win both. So we thought maybe we would get one. And we ended up getting both for phase 1 and then both for phase 2. So at the time, I'd never done a phase 2 proposal, and I had to do both at the same time. So we did end up working with a firm to help get both of those in ahead of the deadline. And they were great. Like, they helped sprinkle in things that I didn't know were valuable to have in a proposal, like pulling quotes and going through strategic plans and referencing different things. Like academically, I know how to go reference journal articles, but that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to an Air Force reviewer. Like, they don't care that Sally et al. Found these results 12 years ago, So that was helpful, getting through to the getting that bulk of paperwork done and filling a volume 5, which if anyone listening has ever been, or if you one day decide to do this and you get into DSIP, which is the submission portal for all of this, volume 5 is where you put in all of your quote unquote additional documents. And it can be a beast of what needs to go in there. And I had, it was new to me. So having help get that pulled together was very much appreciated. Yeah,
absolutely. Government contracts are hard, or any institution like that. So as you guys are growing, have you been bootstrapped, or did you look to venture financing to get this going? Or are you relying on the SBIR type contracts? How are you structured to grow?
Yeah, we're bootstrapped. We looked at venture funding. I have pitched, I don't even know how many, so many times. And when we started, VCs were not interested in defense tech. It was not sexy like it is now. So we kind of just got the feedback like they're not interested. And especially walking in, and we're a female founded company. My co-founder is also a woman. Seeing these two ladies rock up and be like, hey, we're going to do construction tech and defense tech. They're like, no. But so we decided to bootstrap, and that has been a really good decision for us. I think it was definitely the right call. I'm not saying we will never take venture capital dollars, but right now being able to just reinvest profits from SBIRs to build out our commercial side has worked out really well, and we're going to keep doing that for as long as we can.
That's great if you can do it. Definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not having hardware really helps in that regard. I think if you have a physical product, it would be really tough. But we're software, so we get a little bit of a break there.
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, but what is your perspective on, how do your philosophy for defending both your IP, as well as being compliant with the government? How do you think through that? Because that's a challenge for many companies.
Yeah. I originally had no idea that you could really protect software above and beyond, like copyright protection. I didn't know you could patent software, but you totally can, as it turns out. So really, if you're solving something that is different and unique, it's patentable. So we've pursued a couple patents, but there is a balance between, protecting your IP and making sure your competitors and the primes don't eat your lunch and not creating vendor lock for your customer. So we've kind of, towed that line of like, are we actually using this? Are we actually developing it? Let's put IP protection around it. So that's one way to protect your IP. And for people that are going to adhere to patents, adversaries don't necessarily care that it's patented. So, so for that, we have a couple other methods that we employ. One of them, which is, I think it's a little different to how software typically operates, and that's we have a burn policy with data. So no data or assets are included in the application. All the critical data is received on demand. And our applications do not store data locally on the application when it closes. And then, on top of that, we use shared data repositories that the DoD maintains. These are platforms like MOTAR that the Air Force has whenever possible. So that's one thing we do that might be different. I'm not actually sure how other companies have figured out how to do things, but that's how we do it. And specifically with XR, the method of cyber attack is most likely going to be injecting malicious code into 3D objects that you want to visualize in your immersive space. So with the Air Force, they bring their own assets, BYO assets. They do this through their own platforms. But it brings up an interesting point of, if someone is going to create a cyber attack using a 3D asset, what are they going to do in that cyber breach? Because what information are you extracting? It's not just about data at this point. With XR, they are probably going to try to impact human performance or warfighter performance at this point. So adversaries could exploit this kind of connection between users and their mixed reality equipment through different things like, you could flood their field of view to induce motion sickness, or planting objects to clutter your display, or injecting personal data to distract someone while they're in there, or, just using different things to overwhelm them, knock them off their game. Because we lean into the mixed reality side, even if someone did get in, it is harder to mess with your vision and mess with your balance because you can still see the world around you. You still have good definition of what's real and what's not. But I don't know if you want to keep talking, keep going down this rabbit hole, but the solution isn't exactly straightforward, because what most people will think is like, well, you can use end-to-end encryption and then it's safe, right? But end-to-end encryption doesn't guarantee the security of the content being delivered, right? And this is especially relevant with your 3D models or your images or video that threat actors can easily exploit. So the example I give is, if you're sending anthrax through the post, through the mail, it doesn't matter how secure the mail system is. When you open the package on the other end, it's still anthrax, right?
Right. Makes sense. I mean, it's challenging.
It's frustrating because it's outside of our control. We really need entities like Autodesk or Kronos Group, the infrastructure providers, to come up with a secure, non-proprietary file format that allows developers to incorporate end-to-end encryption in regards with content verification. And that might be one of the ways that DoD ends up impacting the industry, because it would just take one bad actor to mess things up.
As it definitely a challenging environment there, especially sharing all the data that you got going back and forth. So, well, where do you see Dauntless going in the next 5 years? What is on your roadmap?
I've been pretty bad so far at predicting. If you told me 5 years ago that you and I would be sitting here having this conversation about all this cyber and DoD stuff, I'd be like, what? Oh, we're in construction app. But I think, in the next 5 years, we'll hopefully be in several verticals. I think with XR, we're going to see traction in training first because it's lower risk. But then, especially for us, we really want to move into operational contexts, which I think will evolve from just supporting the warfighter through things like see what I see and like on-demand checklists to more like on-the-job interventions like trauma care procedures, or using Aura as, more of a command and control and mission planning tool rather than just as an after-action replay. And then as headsets improve, I think we'll also see more distribution into those operational use cases. But I hope that we're across verticals. We're in defense right now. We're working closely with business aviation and commercial aviation. We're working with NASA, so it'd be great to be on the government side of space, and then on the space economy side commercially. We have some educational use cases going forward, so which are used by DoD, but also could be in higher education, so like universities and continuing education institutions. That would be really great. I think originally, because of what we wanted the technology to do, we sort of assumed our applications would be very behind the scenes. So you might use them every day. We have like some of our procedures in there are, very everyday use case things like how to cut a mango, how to change a tire, how to use a compass, things like that, that you would, you might Google. But if you could have that information just available to you while you're doing it, why not?
Yeah.
But we sort of assumed that the application that would be delivering that information might not be something you would necessarily know the name of. It would just be part of what you do. So kind of behind the scenes, but not really, because it's in front of your face. And now, like that we've kind of gotten started and gotten out there and people are interested in what it's called and who we are and what we're doing, it might be something that people actually do know the name of, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Lori-Lee. I appreciate it. And, we're going to have to wrap up for today. But if people want to, follow Dauntless XR or see what you're up to, how best would they do that?
Yeah, I think the best place to find us is I'm on LinkedIn, and so is Dauntless. I can throw out my email out there if you guys want to reach out to us. Always happy to connect.
Okay. Well, thanks again, and let's keep in touch, and best of luck for you guys.
Will do. Thanks so much. It was great being here.